Urban designing, city data. Good urban design has always been a necessity, but it's need data and feedback loops. For most Indian cities, data is not really structured for planning and research. Wider footpaths and walkable streets needed so that people don't crowd together on narrow footpaths. An upgrade to health facilities, sanitation facility, and safety information at bus, metro stops, railway stations, inside buses and trains, in public toilets and other public spaces. Housing. In order to ensure livability and comfort in the home across income classes, projects will have to consider the several factors: building typology, resource efficiencies, and common service related to water, energy, and waste. Locational aspect, connectivity, and urban greenery, etc. Location should be earmarked by master plans to provide area advantages and transport connectivity of affordable housing and self constructed settlements. This will reduce economic and social cost of living. Professional architects and planners have come together to provide design support and training to the self constructed settlements of Dharavi and Shivaji Nagar in Mumbai. Mongolpuri in New Delhi, the initiative must be taken forward in other cities. Mobility. In other Indian countries, formal and informal public transport, including bus, rail, and auto rickshaw, are the backbone of mobility. Cities across the world are radically reimagining the allocation of street space to promote sustainable mobility that is resilient to future shocks and equitable. For example, to ensure physical distancing in shopping district, London and Dublin are widening sidewalks with temporary cones. Milan plans to encourage walking and cycling with low-cost temporary cycle lanes with widened sidewalks, reducing speed limit to 30 km per hour, etc. Melbourne is testing such neighborhood where most daily needs are within 20-meter walk, bike ride or public transport commute. Cities like Chennai, Pune have created 100 kilometers of pedestrian-friendly streets since 2014. Further, China is quadrupling its effort in this year through the Mega Street program, inspired by which the state has expanded the program to 10 more cities. Special planning. As in every district or crisis, whether flood, cyclones, or this pandemic, area with dense concentration of urban poor are impacted far more than the rest of city. These places where infrastructure and amenities are poor even in the normal times, the pandemic has highlighted again the need of building spaces that are not ghettos but non segregated, mixed class, mixed use urban neighborhoods that allow people to support each other. Such mixing would ensure that neglect and poverty is not locked into pockets, that vulnerable population should have access to city center and its resources that are not neglected during a crisis. Conclusion. The ongoing pandemic of COVID 19 is a strong reminder that urbanization has changed the way that people and communities live, work, and interact, and the need to strengthen the system and local capacities to prevent the spread of infectious diseases urgent. As a global community, we must collectively invest in and build strong preparedness systems that are better adapted to increasingly urbanized settings. In this matter, let us also discuss fundamental questions to look into the post COVID 19 urban planning. How dense should a city can be? Aggregation versus disaggregation. How should people travel? Public transport or private transport? How should people work? Workplace or work from home? How should people shop? Retail outlets or online shopping? How should people consult doctor, visit a doctor or telemedicine? How should people socialize, bonding versus distancing? How much of the city should be unbuilt, built city and public open spaces? How should the city plan for its poor? Slums versus housing? How much digital infrastructure should a city go for digital versus manual? After that, we are going to discuss the gender violence and COVID 19. Recently, UN Women has urged member states to include the prevention of violence against women in their action plans on COVID 19, calling the rising gender based violence a shadow pandemic. In addition, the US Secretary General appealed for ceasefire on domestic violence after a horrifying global surge in domestic violence. More in news. UN Agency for Sexual and Reproductive Health has estimated that there would be 31 million more cases of domestic violence worldwide if lockdown continues for another 6 months. In India, March 23 to 1 April, the National Commission of Women has received 69 online complaints of domestic violence from across the country. Many of these cases were from North India, particularly Punjab. State commissions have also reported an increase in number of domestic abuse cases. However, even before the global spread of novel coronavirus, statistics shows that a third of women around the world experience some form of violence in their life. How COVID 2019 is deepening the domestic violence scenario. As lockdown imposes stricter control on one's mobility, they put women in abusive relationship in extremely high risk of damage from physical, sexual, and emotional abuse. This is fueled by mandatory stay-at-home rules, physical distancing, economic uncertainty, and anxieties caused by the pandemic. The World Health Organization says disaster disrupt the physical and social environment that would normally keep the violence contained, such as shelter, stable routine, and violence prevention systems. Healthcare providers and the police are overwhelmed with understaffed. Local support groups are paralyzed or short of funds, and domestic violence shelters are also closed, as well as full. These limitations fuel impunity for the perpetrators, and in the many countries the law is not on women's side. 1 in 4 countries have no laws specifically protecting women from domestic violence. Recent measures taken by the government. First, generalizing one-stop centers. Ministry of Women and Child Development has instructed to ensure that one-stop centers which provide legal and psycho-social help in enhance to survive gender-based violence and link with local medical teams, police and National Legal Service Authority NALSA so that their services are not impacted due to restrictions on movement. Nearly 1,000 people joined the video conference live, including the staff members of One Stop Solution as well as Shelter Home for Women in Distress, Swadhar Greh and Ujjwala Homes, and Working Women Hostels. National Commission for Women has also recently launched a WhatsApp number, making it easier for the women to ask for help alongside a helpline and email option. States Initiative. The Uttar Pradesh Police launched an initiative in March, Suppress Corona, Not Your Voice, asking battered women to call a help number to enable women officers to reach them following a complaint. The community radio program in Uttar Pradesh helped raise while awareness about violence against women, how to recognize domestic violence, and ways to address the issue. Callers were encouraged to call in and share their experience. Another campaign, Bell Bajao, Ring the Bells, calls on men and boys to take stand against domestic violence. Empower One on One is newly launched helpline in Mumbai to report domestic abuse, which has tied up with the government of Maharashtra and Brihan Mumbai Municipal Corporation to launch a toll-free number. NGO and civil society. NGO working in the field of domestic violence are ensuring that every individual member call at least 10 women every day so that women know that they are not alone. NGOs like Sri Mukti Sangathan are helping women by free counseling and use of online facility for reporting the crime. Judicial interventions. The court have taken cognizance on this issue. Jammu and Kashmir High Court passed an order taking the suo motu cognizance of domestic violence cases during lockdown and offered a slew of directions, including creating a special fund and designating the informal space safe spaces for women like grocery store pharmacies where they could report domestic violence and abuse without altering the perpetrators. Delhi High Court recently directed the state and centre to take measures to protect women from domestic violence. UN recommendations against domestic violence. The UN urged that all government to make the prevention and the redress to violence against women as a part of their national response plans for COVID-19. Outlined the several actions that can be taken to improve the situation. First, increase investment in online services and civil society organization. Make sure judicial systems continue to prosecute abusers to ensure that incidents of violence against women and girls are given high priority with no impunity for the perpetrators. Set up emergency warning system in for pharmacies and groceries, declare shelters as essential services, create safe ways for women to seek support without altering their abusers, avoid releasing prisoners convicted of violence against women in any form, scale up public awareness campaigns and particularly those targeted at men and boys. So also in this context, let us read about general reasons and issues involved. So orthodox and patriarchal mindset, male domination and control over women, male privileges and women's subordinate status, infertility or desire for a male child, Women are also more likely to experience intimate partner violence if they have low education, exposure to mothers being abused by a partner, abuse during childhood, or attitude accepting violence, and men privilege and women's subordinate status, changing socioeconomic relations, particularly in urban areas such as more income of working women than her partner, abusing and neglecting in-laws, story and demands, etc., violence against young widows, especially in rural areas. Most often, they are cursed for their husband's death and are deprived of proper food and clothing without often being given the opportunity for the remarriage in most of the homes. Also, there are cases of molestation and rape attempts by other family members in the joint family. Recent measures taken by community centers. Okay, that we have already read. Now, next is there are mainly three laws in India that deal directly with domestic violence. The Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act 2005. The Act expanded the definition of domestic violence to include not just physical but also verbal, emotional, sexual, and domestic economic violence. The law is broad in its definition. Domestic relationship includes married women, mothers, daughters, and sisters. This law not only protects women who are married but also protect women in live-in relationships as well as family members, including mothers and grandmothers, etc. The Supreme Court has upheld the Domestic Violence Act will apply even after the divorce. It has also struck down the words adult male from the pertinent provisions of DV Act to lay down that a woman can also file a complaint against another woman accusing her of domestic violence. Under this law, women can seek protection against domestic violence, financial compensation, and can get maintenance from their abuser in case they are living apart. It provides the secure right to secure housing, that is, right to reside in matrimonial or shared household, whether or not she has any title or rights in the household. This right is secured by a residence order, which is passed by a court. A magistrate can pass a protection order under the Act to ensure the abuser doesn't contact or get closer to the survivor. It provides for the breach of protection order or interim protection order by respondent as cognizable and non-bailable offence punishable with imprisonment which may extend to 1 year or with a fine which may extend to Rs 20,000 or with both. It provides for appointment of protection officers, NGO to provide assistance to the woman for medical examination, legal aid and safe shelter. Punishment of 1 year maximum imprisonment and 20,000 each for both to the offenders is mentioned. PWDVA enshrines Principles of Convention on Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, CEDAW, which India ratified in 1993, the Dowry Prohibition Act. In this criminal law that punishes the taking and giving of dowry, under this law, if someone takes, gives, and even demands dowry, they can be imprisoned for 6 months or they can be fined up to 5,000. Section 498A of Indian Penal Code and the criminal law, which applies to husbands or relatives of house of the husband who were cruel to women. Which applies to husband or relatives of the husband who are cruel to women. Then, Global Report on Internal Displacement. The Internal Displacement Monitoring Center, IDMC, recently published the Global Report on Internal Displacement 2020, GRID to 2020. Key findings. Globally, 3.34 million new displacement took place in 2019, which is highest figure since 2012. Social issues region has highest share of new displacement. Total number of internal displaced people IDPs reached 50.8 million. 18.3 million IDPs are children under 15 and 3.7 billion are over 60. Displacement triggered by conflict and violence. An all-time high 45.7 million people were displaced as a result of conflict and violence. Three-quarters of these were in just 10 countries like Syria, Colombia, Yemen, Afghanistan, etc. India had the highest number of new disaster displacement 5 million in the world in 2019. These were the result of combination of increasing hazard intensity, high population exposure, conflict and high level of social and economic vulnerability. 5,90,000 people live in internal displacement as a result of disaster in India. New disaster displacement were a result of various cyclones like Fani, Vayu, Bulbul, etc., along with southwest monsoon and droughts in various parts. IDPs are different from refugees in that, having not crossed a border, they are not typically covered by international refugee protections. They remain subjected to national laws and, as such, are afforded less protection. Then, in this Internal Displacement Monitoring Center, it was established in 1998 as a part of Norwegian Refugee Council, NGO that protects the rights of people affected by displacement. It seeks to provide high quality data analysis expertise on internal displacement with the aim of informing policies and operational decisions. There are three areas of action needed to end displacement and reduce displacement risk. To finding solution of internal displacement. We are starting with strengthen capacity. Ability of individual and organization to reduce the internal displacement. It can be achieved by involving ITPs and their host communities in planning and in provisions of basic services and supporting them with developing new skills. Then reinforce political commitment, willingness of decision makers and service provider to recognize and invest in addressing internal displacement, integrating policies and programs with internal displacement while aligning with them with national priorities. Then improved evidence, increased coverage, quality, and availability of information on internal displacement. So these will help in finding solutions to internal displacement. Then we talk about Global Education Coalition. So United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization UNESCO has launched the Global Education Coalition. In Global Education Coalition is a multi-sector partnership involving United Nations agencies, international organizations, private sector, civil society representative, philanthropic and non-governmental organization, etc. It seeks to facilitate inclusive learning opportunities for children and youth during the period of educational disruption due to COVID-19 pandemic. Aim of GEC: help countries in mobilizing resources and implementing innovative and context appropriate solutions to help provide education remotely, leveraging high tech, low tech, and no tech approaches. Seek equitable solutions and universal access. Ensure coordinated responses and avoid overlapping efforts. Facilitate the return of students to school when they reopen to avoid an upsurge in dropout rates. Then, adverse consequences of school disclosure as per UNESCO. First, interrupted learning in children and youth are deprived of opportunities for growth and development, especially the underprivileged who have fewer educational opportunities beyond school. 191 countries have closed all their schools, affecting over 1.5 billion students from pre primary to tertiary education, 9 out of 10 students worldwide. Poor nutrition, as many children and youth rely on free or discounted meals provided at school for food and healthy nutrition. Confusion and stress for teachers, as they often unsure of their obligation and how to maintain connection with the students who support learning. Parents unprepared for distancing and homeschooling, especially those with limited education and resources. Challenges in creating and maintaining improving distance learning as demand overwhelms existing portals to remote education. Rate in dropout rates Rise in dropout rates due to protracted closures and when economic shocks place pressure on children to work and generate income for financially distressed families. Social isolation as schools are hubs of social activity and human interaction that is essential for learning and development. Challenges in measuring and validating learning as strategies to administer examination at a distance raise serious concern about fairness and especially when access to learning becomes variable. About UNESCO. UNESCO is a specialized agency of United Nations that seek to build peace through international cooperation in education, science and culture. It was established in 16 November 1945, headquarters Paris in France. It has 193 members and 11 associate members. Guidelines for safe reopening of schools. UNESCO, UNICEF, World Food Programme, and World Bank issued guidelines on the safe reopening of schools amidst COVID-19 pandemic and related risk. Guidelines include policy reform with clear policies for school opening and closure during the public health emergencies to expand equitable access for marginalized and out of school children and strengthen to standardize remote learning practices. Second, addressing financing requirements by investing in strengthening educational system for recovery and resilience. Ensure conditions that reduce disease transmission, safeguard essential services, supplies, and promote healthy behavior, hand washing, social distancing, etc. Focus on practices that compensate for lost instructional time, strengthen pedagogy, and build on hybrid learning models such as integrating approaches in remote and distance education. Adopt school opening policies and practices to expand access to marginalized groups such as previously out of school children, migrant children, etc. Diversify critical communication and outreach by making them available in relevant languages and in accessible formats. Then we talk about Vidyadhan 2.0. The Ministry of Human Resource Development e-launched Vidyadhan 2.0 program for inviting e-learning content contributions. Vidyadhan is a national program in which individual teachers, educationalists, subject expert, etc., organization that is school, etc., can contribute to e-learning in the education domain. These contributions can be made in different types such as teaching videos, practice questions, competency-based items, lesson plans for grade of 1 to 12, and subjects specified by the state and UTs under their respective project. It also includes sharing life-changing experiences, concentration, relieving sessions, sessions on mental and physical health, session on grooming and personality development. Vidyadhan 2.0. The Vidyadhan 2.0 was launched due to increasing requirement for e-learning content for students, both for school and higher education in the backdrop of COVID-19, due to urgent need to integrate digital education with schooling to augmenting learning. Content will be monitored by a panel of academic experts and released for use of Diksha app to children across country. Continue learning anytime, anywhere. States and union territories can initiate their own program as a part of Vidyadhan 2.0. About Diksha, digital infrastructure knowledge sharing, Diksha platform was launched in 2017 by Ministry of Human Resource Development to provide supplementary learning material for the students and upgrading skills for teachers. The high quality e-learning material both for students and teachers are available on this portal. Diksha will serve as national digital infrastructure for teachers and will aid teachers to learn and train themselves, for which assessment resources will be available. States and government bodies and private organizations can integrate Diksha into their respective teacher initiatives. Currently, Diksha supports 10 languages with Hindi, English, Gujarati, Bengali, Assamese, Marathi, Odia, Kannada, Tamil, Telugu, both for creating and viewing content. Then we have science and technology, and in science and tech we are going to talk about BCG vaccine and COVID-19. So researchers across the world are testing Bacillus calmette-guerin vaccine against the novel coronavirus disease. So we are not going to read about this vaccine because this vaccine never came into existence, but we'll surely read about the universal immunization program. So the immunization program in India was introduced in 1978 as expanded program of immunization by the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, Government of India. In 1985, the program was unified as Universal Immunization Program to be implemented in a phased manner to cover all districts in the country. By 1989 to 90, with one of the largest health program in the world. Under UPI, free vaccines are provided to infants, children, and pregnant women against 12 life-threatening diseases such as tuberculosis, diphtheria, pertussis, tetanus, polio, hepatitis B, pneumonia, meningitis due to Haemophilus influenza type B, measles, rubella, Japanese encephalitis, rotavirus, diarrhea, rubella, JE rotavirus vaccine in select states and districts. So this was the universal immunization program. Moving ahead, immunizations and types of immunity. Immunity to a disease is achieved through the presence of antibodies to that disease in the person's system. Antibodies are proteins produced by the body to neutralize the destroy toxins and disease-carrying organisms. Antibodies are disease-specific. For example, measles antibody will protect a person who is exposed to measles disease but will have no effect if he or she is exposed to mumps. So immunization is a process whereby a person is made immune or resistant to an infectious disease, typically by administration of a vaccine. Immunization introduced antigens and weakened pathogens to a person in such a way that that the individual does not become sick but still produce antibodies. Because the body saves copies of antibodies, it is protected if the threat should reappear later in life. There are two types of immunity in humans: natural or innate immunity or acquired or adaptive immunity. In natural and innate immunity is something already present in the body and refers to the non-specific defense mechanism that come into play immediately or within hours of antigens absence in the body. These mechanisms include physical barriers such as skin, chemicals in the blood, immune system cells that attack foreign cells in the body. Next, we talk about is acquired or adaptive immunity. It is of two types. First is active immunity or passive immunity. Active immunity acquired by the exposure to the disease or the vaccination. Either way, if a person immune comes into contact with a person of disease in future, the immune system will recognize it and immediately produce the antibodies needed to fight it. Active immunity takes time to usually several weeks to develop, but it is long lasting. Passive immunity acquired when a person is given antibodies to a disease rather than producing them through his or her own immune system. He is a born baby acquires passive immunity from its mother through the placenta. A person can also get passive immunity through antibodies containing blood product such as immune globulin and plasma, which may be given when immediate protection from specific disease is needed. The main advantage of passive immunity is that protection is immediate, but it lasts only for 2 weeks or months. The convalescent plasma therapy, currently identified as a potential treatment for COVID 19, is a way of developing passive immunity in COVID patients. So this is it for this video. Later we'll just read about the updates on various aspects of COVID-19 in April 2020. And with this, we have completed 70 pages of this booklet. Yet 30 are remaining. Okay, see ya.